There we go. Looks like we've got about 50 people waiting right now. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. We're growing quickly, group. There's Mary Jane. Thank you all for joining. You should be on mute, please. You should arrive actually in mute, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. Hi, Wasim. I can see you're not on mute for some reason.
Hey, Wanda, I'm in
Nice
trouble
to see
already.
you.
Hey?
Trouble already, you know?
Yeah. There you go.
Nice to see you. All right, James, I think we're about 152 people. We're growing here. Maybe another 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right, why don't we go ahead and get started, James? You're at 164 and we're slowing down a little bit. So the floor is yours. We'll all go on mute here.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Hoffman with the North Texas Tollway Authority. I also have the privilege and the honor to chair the Emerging Technologies Committee. And we'd like to thank you for attending today's session on big data. This is actually the second session that the Emerging Technologies Committee has brought to you. Last month was blockchain, and we have one each month through the remainder of the year as well. Big data is one of our 5 working groups within the Emerging Technologies Committee. The other 4 are blockchain, innovation and strategy, connected autonomous, shared and electric vehicles and related technologies, and then tolling and customer management. The purpose of the committee, as well as each of the working groups, are to investigate and analyze technology-related trends, issues, and topics. Basically, what's up ahead on the road, if you will, and then bring that back to the membership base in whatever form and fashion that may take, whether it's a meetup like this, a white paper, or what have you. If you are interested in joining one of the working groups, we've got over 250 members right now that are on at least one or more of the working groups. Please reach out to the IBTTA staff, and we'll be in contact shortly thereafter with more information. And now I'd like to introduce our session moderator, Marwan Mahdi. Marwan is the chair of the Emerging Technology Subcommittee for Big Data. He leads CDM Smith's global technology practice and works with transportation agencies and the adoption and deployment of disruptive technologies. Marwan's done a great job pulling this session together, and he's looking forward to bringing more sessions on big data to the IBTTA membership throughout the year. With that, Marwan, you have the floor.
Thank you, James. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few Zoom logistics so we get the most out of this presentation. To begin with, this webinar will be 90 minutes. All participants will be on mute. There will be parts of the meeting where you'll have the chance to raise your hands, but for the most part, we've got everyone on mute. We're currently in gallery mode, but we recommend moving into speaker mode during the presentation so that you can see the presentations better. Please ask questions and make comments using the chat function at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this meeting and we'll post it on the IBTTA website and on the IBTTA YouTube page. At the end of this meetup, you'll receive a link to a survey. Please help us improve our virtual events by sending your feedbacks. So today's event is built off of the Big Data Committee that I'm chairing. When people talk about big data, it means different things to different people. And the intent of this committee came to fruition because people wanted to understand what are the main concepts of big data? What do these mean for toll agencies? How does technology help support toll agencies in terms of improving operations, improving business intelligence? So really the purpose of the Big Data Committee is to build a comprehensive architecture or concept of operation, if you will, to help agencies better walk through how they can take advantage of big data and technology to support their operational and investment needs. And this webinar here is the first of many that we're going to be hosting throughout the year and hopefully in the years to come as well. We're starting off the conversation with bringing in two esteemed speakers that have been doing work focused on big data. The first speaker is J.J. Eden, who serves as the executive director of for the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. He was vice president director of tolling for AECOM. JJ is the president of Alliance for Toll Innovation, formerly ATI, an organization working to advance interoperability and innovation within the industry. JJ was formerly the chief operating officer for North Carolina Turnpike Authority, where he developed the business rules, operating procedures, and AET systems for the state's first modern toll road. JJ serves on the IBTA board of directors and is an honorary member as well. JJ will talk about big data from the perspective of what his agency has been doing, highlighting best ways to approach it, challenges and issues with technologies and data in general. Our second speaker will be Major General Jim Trogdon. Jim served as the secretary for the North Carolina Department of Transportation until 2020. Jim led the department's effort to strategically prepare for future transportation technologies by creating the annual North Carolina Transportation Summit, focused on disruptors such as automated, connected, electric, and shared vehicles, urban air mobility, 3D printing, machine learning, edge and cloud technology. Jim is currently the principal transportation consultant, U.S. commercial and public sector with SAS, a data analysis and visualization company headquartered in Cary, North Carolina. Jim will talk more about the perspective of big data and the value it brings to toll agencies from the private perspective and what data integration data technology means to support tollway agencies. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor to J.J. Eden, who's going to be presenting his slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Maran. Welcome everybody, and good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're coming from. And I want to talk about, let's see if I can get my slides here. I want to talk about the big data, and I'm going to start by saying when we did Easy Pass, big data meant a totally different thing. I remember everybody wanted a report. We had 127 reports, some ran 100 pages, and the first time they brought them in was on a skid. And everybody realized they couldn't do anything with, hundreds and thousands of pages, and we had to go to something else, so there we go. So, from there we've come a long way, and my point is we've evolved. The tolling's evolved from, cash and electromechanical systems. We were on 80-column punch card in Pennsylvania when I was up there as deputy executive director to hang on, we'll go forward. There we go. To electronic toll collection and all electronic toll collection, and we're still evolving now with connected and autonomous vehicles, throwing even more data at us. Cheryl, I can't get it to advance.
JJ, can you put it in presentation mode? You took it out of presentation mode, sorry.
I did.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Down at the bottom, that little screen at the very bottom looks like a wine glass. all the way to the bottom right. Here, let me put it back in.
All right.
Let me just,
It's not down there.
yeah, let me just put it back. Are you seeing your slides?
I am now.
Okay, so now I'm gonna give you remote control back. Now just click the slide and then, nope.
No.
JJ, that's okay. Why don't you
You
just,
run 'em?
yep,
Go
I'll
for it.
run them. Yep.
All right. So anyway, go to the next one. So, you know, data, you could have a pile of data sitting there, and then you could sort it and analyze it, and then you can arrange it. But actually to use it, you have to kind of have it visually presented, or some way that our minds can actually understand and capture it. Hit the next one. So big data priorities for North Carolina. Go ahead. So a purpose-driven future. You know, we're looking at how to serve our customers better, how to reduce our costs, especially in this post-COVID environment. You know, we're looking across platforms, not only within tolling, but we're working with, and you'll see here in a minute, with a bunch of outside companies that actually are doing this in their industries. And we're trying to bring over that technology into what we do here in tolling. And definitely mobility focused. It's not just tolling itself, but we're looking at, you know, what Uber's doing. We're working with transit. We're working on a statewide transit account, transportation account, things like that. Next. So again, I said multiple roadside identification solutions. So, you know, right now, you know, we have a tri-protocol reader. We're also looking at the potential of, if somebody wants to use a cell phone or something eventually, being able to take multiple payment systems. Mobile-based systems, I really think that the next big change in tolling is mobile-based payments, in vehicle payment systems. And that's going to change our world, you know, because you're going to be part of parking, fast food, and all the above. And that's, you know, that's going to bring tons of data inside the organization, and what you're going to do with it and how you're going to use it and what pieces of it you really need, which is a big focus. You can't take it all. You can't analyze it all. We're looking at, by next year, actually within the next 3 to 5 years, actually having a fully automated back office with mobility pricing plans, as I said, looking at statewide systems and cross platforms. With the statewide transportation account. On our system, our toll system, we're looking at a dual cloud platform where we could open it up to outside payment systems. So if I'll pick on somebody, McDonald's, for instance, they have a payment system now. They could come in and say, hey, we want to also collect your toll, pay for your tolls. And we would allow that for multiple places. So hopefully by first quarter next year, we're going to put out an application basically for people to take over a lot of our payment processing. Hit the next one. Again. So one of the things one of the companies we're working with is Wejo. So again, we're purpose driven. So when COVID hit, we have 2 main projects, one in Charlotte, one in Raleigh. The Charlotte project is recovered over where we were before COVID. The Raleigh project is still down about 25%. And we think it's because of the work at home efforts. That road served mostly the Research Triangle Park, where Cisco, IBM, SAS, a whole bunch of companies are located. So we've working with Wejo. We're looking at data flow from off the connected vehicles before COVID and post-COVID. Hit it again, Cheryl. There we go. So data's pulled every 3 seconds, you know, basically from the time you turn on your ignition to the time you turn it off. We have about 300,000 vehicles in North Carolina, current market, and it's grown since we actually started this. So we're pulling a lot of data. Hit it again. So the advantage of like the WeJo system, and by the way, I'll talk about Verizon in a minute. We're also starting to work with them. They do billions of transactions a day, actually. But it's not intrusive data collection without the expensive tube or clicker. It's safer. You don't have people out on the roadside. Immediate detection. So, for instance, if somebody hits a pothole in a consistent spot, you can send somebody out to fix it. The airbags deployed, things like that. Seatbelt fastened, without expensive roadside infrastructure. And you can augment the data with multiple vendors to validate the traffic. For instance, we could use our traffic system, our ITS system data coupled with the WeJo data to cross-verify each other, and the toll system, by the way. So other thing, go ahead, we'll hit the next slide. So this was a video, we'll just skip this, go to the next slide. But basically, you could see all the traffic movements if you want there. But we found that in order to utilize this data and to look at it, we had to be able to store it someplace. And we found a couple companies actually working with DOT. We had 5 companies that were doing different big data projects between DOT and the Turnpike, and trying to find who's the best solution, who's the most cost effective. But one of them we were working with strongly was Snowflake. You may know them from, they do a Fortnite big game. I think they have 42 petabytes of data just for that game. And so they're working as our storage platform in order for us to house the data to be able to do something with it. And then we have SAS, Jim's on the phone with us, General Trogdon. They're doing a lot of the analysis for us. For instance, on another project with them, we have them tied into the lane controller so that we could actually verify the data, do some analytics on it at that point, some AI to try to find some system problems, and then cross-check it with the toll systems data that we're getting out of the backside. So again, data verification and using different data platforms in order to provide a better level of service. Hit the next one. So how do we manage data? We captured unobstructed, or unstructured rather, and structured data in real time. That's a key. We're able to watch the system health, vehicle data, including speed. With customer, you could interweave customer inquiries and customer comments on different things in order to improve your system. For instance, another thing we're doing with the connected vehicle data, we're opening a new interchange that's been awaited big time by the public. And we did it in phases. So the first phase, we tested the data without having the interchange there, and what was the traffic patterns and where were people coming from and going to. And then we opened the interchange without tolls, and we're seeing what the difference is in that traffic patterns and what's happening there and what the public comments are there. And then another couple of weeks, probably about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be opening that for tolls, and we're going to see what kind of impact the tolls actually had on that traffic data. So in order to do this, we have to make sense of this data. So it's, those of you who know me, I've been a big interoperability person for ever since we founded EasyPass. But this is kind of the interoperability of data. So you have all these data sources coming from the car, directly, coming from the toll system, coming from, your ITS systems, coming from our public relations group and stuff, and more manual data. So how do you make this data interoperable? How do you tailor data for individual needs, non-compatible systems, right? We've dealt with a lot of non-compatible and tolling for a long time. Many traffic and customers into increased mobility options. So now that we're looking more as a mobility platform than a toll system, how do we share this with transit? How do we share this with our ferry system? How do we work together in order to provide the best traffic and toll service and transportation service for our customers? We could run reports in minutes, not hours. Remember, everybody wanted an ad hoc. going back to Easy Pass when we had the hundreds of reports with hundreds of pages, you know, there wasn't an option to do ad hocs. It would have taken days, and then we probably brought the systems to their knees. Hit the next one. So basically, the first thing you have to do is only retrieve, that we're finding out anyway here in North Carolina, and keep the data you need. You know, don't try to get everything. Don't try to capture everything. You try to do stuff that reduces your routine or repetitive work that is prone to error. Get off the spreadsheets and onto a better platform. Provide single source data for all users. It allows reports to be dynamically changed as things change. When we started putting together, we were sure what we needed in reports. And as it came about, and as we were starting to read the reports and look at different things, there's a real temptation to keep adding things, but you have to kind of drive yourself into adding the things and looking at the sources you really need. Cheryl, next one. So vehicle technology, hit it again. So we're working with vehicle infrastructure. I've talked to almost all the car companies. We have actually through DOT, we have, I believe, 3 connected and autonomous vehicle projects we're working on with different manufacturers. The Turnpike itself did one with Volvo trucks. So we're working with that. Omni-Air Consortium, the 6C Coalition, everybody, in order to, you know, make sure the data platforms are coming in the right direction and they're going to be able to be brought together. And the vehicle to infrastructure side is real important too as we go. We're really seeing the car companies, there's a couple pilots going now where some of the car companies are actually putting applications in their vehicle, besides for Audi and others, to actually do payment systems. So when that happens, you know, we may be inundated in data, whereas we may wind up actually looking at things like, you know, vehicle per mile toll and some other stuff as more and more car companies get into sharing that data one way or another. One of the other things that's talking about this and being able to share the data platforms and stuff, we are in the process of switching to delivering our transponders through Amazon, because who doesn't get an Amazon package a day or a week at least? You know, and the customer reaction to that has been very positive. So, you know, but being able to have Amazon actually process that order, basically it takes us about a day to process an order and get it out the door, where Amazon says if it's under 30 seconds, they did something wrong. So we're working with them too. I really think the, you know, Apple Wallet and Google Pays are going to come into this, and that's going to add to our data flows. I mentioned Verizon before. We just started talking to them. Basically, it came from the cafe. They called about their data solution and what they're doing. As you know, they have payment systems, and we have talked to them years before, but they're more interested now in their data platforms and what they get off of their cell phone stuff. IBM, SAP, you know, obviously working with Microsoft on some of the cloud solutions there, and Amazon, they're the 2 cloud platforms we hit. Anyway, hit the next one, Cheryl. So statewide transportation count, I talked about it. You know, you can pretty much see we're going to even do, you know, tie into pizza delivery, Uber. We have ferry system, our DMV, transit, et cetera, the airports, airport parking, commercial and government parking areas, and et cetera. Hit it again. So this is just basically a diagram of the mobility providers. As you can see, the transit to tolling to local deliveries, user-focused payment systems. With COVID, cash is less popular by a lot, even among the older generations like mine. So we're, it's actually pushed a little bit the whole envelope. Not so much for us tolling because we're already all electronic, but for others like transit and the ferry system, et cetera. Hit it again. And with that, I don't think I stayed within my time. I thank you, and I look forward to talking to everybody in the breakouts.
Well, thanks everyone. This is Jim Trogdon, and it's great to be back to at least a virtual meeting of IBTTA. And my topic is SAS Analytics for the Internet of Things and how that supports big data. So the Internet of Things has been around for some time. And there's no doubt that IoT is having an effect on our daily lives. But we are just scratching the surface. Only 4 years ago, the number of internet-connected devices equaled the global population. And today, there are 7.6 billion people and 20 billion IoT devices. We anticipate by 2025, that number will be 50 billion IoT devices. This is what's driving big data. From home to office, from healthcare to transportation, from farming to energy, IoT has taken the center stage in the big data opportunity. And as IoT expands traditional processing beyond investigation of stored data, i.e. what you call data at rest, to investigation of streaming data or data in motion or on the edge will grow rapidly. It will also extend analytic opportunities to deploy to edge devices, analysis at the source of where data is generated and where it is collected. So here's a great example today. Walmart collects every hour from every store and its online operation on its 1 million customers. They generate 2.5 petabytes of data per hour. So in a 10-hour day, that's 25 petabytes of data, of inventory, sales, customer actions, customer transactions, customer surveys. That is certainly big data and certainly on a daily basis. But data is not information, as I like to always say, and information is not knowledge. So how do you turn vast amounts of data that's available into processed information that leads to knowledge and ultimately the very best decisions? So this is the traditional life cycle of data in most organizations today. Data is collected, it's moved to a storage location where analysis, actions, and reports are generated. In many cases, this traditional model is adequate and is providing timely information and knowledge to make decisions with the traditional, what I call the daily, weekly, quarterly, or annual reports battle rhythm. However, in an environment where more data sources are streaming and non-traditional data at rest, then there are limitations to this model. These limitations can significantly impact latency, can show unable to process streaming information at all, to loss of benefit or value if and when the information becomes available in your normal daily, weekly, or monthly reports. The value of streaming data is captured through analytics on the edge or in motion. IoT is forcing a fundamental rethinking of business and operational strategies as organizations adapt new models for agile IT and edge analytics. Terabyte and petabyte scale data is being generated from automobiles to heavy machines, from factories to farms, so the capability to capture, monitor, and rapidly process information is critical for a modern and digital enterprise. Smart connected devices are generating data with analytics applications that need to connect and aggregate and analyze to deliver information and actionable insights. All of this is what allows real-time analysis and action at a pre-storage phase. So what does this mean to you, to tolling authorities? Well, at the roadside, it means you could be able to build your trips by linking each of your gantry transactions for each customer individually at the roadside. It means that you could perform license plate reads and match DMV records to identify the owner of the vehicles at the roadside. It means you can immediately process transactions or what JJ referred to prepaid or mobile accounts at the roadside. It means you can immediately process transactions against email invoiced accounts at the roadside, and then send only the necessary records directly back to cloud storage. Why is this important? Why would you want to do it? Think of Uber, Lyft, or rental car companies today in a dynamic pricing scenario. If you can send them an electronic invoice trip when the vehicle leaves your facility before it reaches its destination, I think you will have some very happy customers out there and significantly simplify collection. It also could mean that after the data leaves the roadside, it goes directly to cloud storage. Your operational and commercial back office functions could fully reside in the cloud. It allows for shared services among agencies to be paid for by use and by subscription. It means you can combine operational data with real-time third-party data, as JJ gave examples of, to provide greater customer insights and greater customer experiences and more complex marketing campaigns. It means that you can support streaming data from connected vehicles, whether they're telematics or whether they're roadside collection. And it means you can support containers and microservice architecture, which I won't go into in detail today, but just to tell you, this could substantially reduce your cost. So what does analytics for IoT architecture look like? SAS ESP on the edge is embedded software that runs on either gateways or other commodity hardware, such as single board computers or sensors. And so you see it over on the left. It allows you to collect data streaming from any of these sources that we know about today and potentially from sources that we don't even know about yet. The entire system revolves around the ESP XML server, which is where the bulk of streaming analytic activities occur. And this XML server is made up of several parts itself, but the heart of it is a continuous query engine. The ESP model describes what the event looks like and stores it in the source window and what to do with that data and actions that it derives in its derived windows as needed. Data enters through one or more adapters or connectors and leaves ESP bound for other ports downstream through one or more adapters or connectors as well. The key in simplified terms is streaming data can enter into the event stream processing software where models, algorithms, analysis can be done on the streaming data. The data can be joined with data at rest from your enterprise sources, and then a suite of tools can be applied for such thing as real-time dashboarding, statistical analysis, visual data mining, and machine learning for greater insights and actions. And finally, the right streaming data is then sent to long-term storage. This is the SAS event stream processing capability as a standalone today. And then the next slide, I can show you how it will reside in a Microsoft Azure environment. And so this is Microsoft Azure in cooperation with SAS Analytics for the Internet of Things and its event stream processing software within a SAS VIA framework. So big data. You're probably already moving to some big data and maybe some streaming data challenges and seeing those. Some of the areas you see on this screen you've been focused on for years: data management, visualization, decision management, forecasting. The others have rapidly improved capabilities that you will be considering when you're looking at analysis of streaming data sources, and you will find that these capabilities are not only convenient, but they'll be required. And that's machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, natural language processing, and real-time deployment across your enterprise, across many sensors simultaneously, and real-time systems. So what does this capability give you? It gives you the capability to select and transform data, select data in business terms, not in programming languages, using smart filters and predefined fields. explore and understand patterns and relationships using traditional and high velocity analytics, compare and manage various business models within your data, and then visually analyze data, receive alerts, embed dashboards, and communicate across your organization. And what do these capabilities do in practice? Volvo Trucks experience challenges with remote diagnostics, monitoring of critical engine and transmission trouble codes. Always bringing these systems into diagnostic centers was expensive in terms of lost time and lost productivity. The question Volvo had was, how can we use our data streaming from these vehicles to remotely monitor and develop predictive maintenance programs? Through SAS solutions, Volvo and Mack Trucks experienced a 70% reduced diagnostic time and a 20% reduced repair time on 175,000 vehicles across North America. This is the type of capabilities and impacts you could expect with analytics for IoT and your ability to see action streaming events as they occur within your organization. So I really appreciate your time and opportunity to present. If you have any questions or want more information, don't hesitate to call or contact me. And remember, the two most important things is big data will grow based on streaming analytics. You'll really want the capability to analyze streaming analytics as you move forward. And then the last and most important thing that I think you should take out of this presentation is my motto of change is not mandatory, survival is optional. Thank you all, and I'll turn it back over to Marlon.
Thank you, Jim. Great presentation for both. All right, so this is the part where we're going to seek your input and your perspective. There are two questions, so we're going to move out to breakout sessions right now, and I'll go through how this is going to work in a minute. But the two questions that we have, since this is the first, as I said at the onset of this presentation, of many webinars into the future, we're going to keep the conversation broad. We want to know from toll agencies what are the challenges that you face within the organization when it comes to operations, investment decisions, and how does emerging technology and big data analytics play in supporting your needs? And then what are the challenges in you being able to take advantage of those big data solutions? Now, we understand that some of the people that will be in the breakout sessions are not tollway agencies. They may be consultants, they may be representatives from technology firms, data firms. So we want to also hear your perspective around what that means, the role of big data to support toll agencies, what you've seen, because your perspective is probably going to be more comprehensive. You've worked with multiple clients. So what have you seen as being the needs of tolling agencies? What have you determined to be some of the roadblocks, if you will, or the challenges in being able to implement some of those big data solutions? The second question is a little bit more forward thinking. We want to get a perspective from you all about the outlook of toll agencies and the role of big data to help support that outlook. What are the trends that you're seeing? What does the future look like? You know, we're going through a pandemic right now. We're having to rely heavily on technology. We may be moving towards a different way of living. Many of us work from home. Many of us shop from home. How does that going to look like as this pandemic endures, and even after that? So that's one example. But what do you see the general trends in relation to the changes of mobility, changes of revenue sources, and the size of revenue, et cetera? And then we want to get your perspective on that, and want to understand what are you doing in terms of sort of attracting a more diverse customer base. And the same question obviously applies to the private sector involved, because they may also have a perspective that is much more comprehensive from working with clients in the United States, perhaps abroad, et cetera. So the questions for the breakout sessions are there just to initiate the discussion. We have a lot of people on this Zoom call, and we're going to go and break out into 10 groups. Their breakout session will be 20-minute long. Each group will have a facilitator and scribe who will help with the conversation and take notes for reporting out. They will announce themselves when the groups are formed. There are 2 questions. You are not obligated to answer both. Answering one, the other, or both, depending on time, will be fine. At the end of the breakout session, the scribes are going to come back and will provide an update. I'm going to pick about 5 to 6 groups to report. Other groups will, who are not picked up, will provide input in the chat box, and I'll be using that input to serve as input for the Q&A that we're going to have with JJ and Jim. Please note that when you're going to go to your group out session, it may take a few seconds before the scribes or the facilitator join. That's just, you know, part of the technology and how we're setting up how the scribes are going to join in which group. So with that, Cheryl, the floor is yours.
Marwan, everybody's coming back.
Yeah, and I was in the middle of the conversation.
Sorry about that.
So
We
we're
had
gonna.
one room that,
So
time
folks from group 4 that were commenting, please email us, send us a chat with your questions so we can relate them to JJ and Jim.
Yeah, and you can use this chat room right here, chat. Whatever you want to hear, this gets saved, and then we can actually circulate this.
Marwan, do you want us to put any of all our responses into the chat, or you want to hold off on that?
You know what, you can. So Cheryl, just to remind me, are we able to save the chat?
Yes.
Yeah, my account will save the whole chat.
All right. Yes. So then, yes, please send those along, and great. So let's just move along. Just in the interest of time, we want to be respectful of everyone's schedule. I know 90 minutes is not a small amount of time. So I'm going to call out a couple of our scribes to quickly tell us some of the key takeaways that they've heard from the conversation. I'd like for us to keep every contribution to about 1 to 2 minutes at the most. And then I'm going to be looking at the chat box in the meantime. After the comments of the scribes provide, I'll turn it to JJ and to Jim to provide a quick reaction comment based on what the scribes are saying and based on what they've heard in the conversations. And then I'll, initiate a Q&A. And then we'll have to probably stop, 5 minutes before the end so we can talk about next steps. All right. So with that said, would scribes from groups 1, 2, 6, 7, and 9 provide a summary of their the findings of their discussions, please? So let's start with group 1. Who's the scribe for group 1?
Marwan, you may want to just call people's names out. It might be easier.
Yeah. Cheryl, can you remind me who's the scribe for group 1?
Well, it was random, so we didn't know ahead of time. So
you got Mike Catalico right next to you. Why don't you call him?
Okay, so Michael, yes, all right. So Michael, could you provide
Sure.
a summary?
Great. So I was in group 7.
Okay.
We had some good conversation. It went very quickly, much too quickly. We only got through kind of some of the talking about current issues and challenges, and we had perspective both from agency folks and from consultants. So some of the key takeaways were the need to be able to, there's a need out there to transform data into meaningful customer information, to be more agile with that. Everything from a planning side and a traffic management and safety side, being able to get that information quickly into customer hands or customer devices to be able to help with decision-making on the roadways, but also with customer benefits, trying to find ways to everything from finding the effectiveness of how marketing campaigns and messaging campaigns are working in real time in some cases, and even looking at proving out from a financial perspective. So going from the typical traffic and revenue studies that go into planning to using more real-time origin destination type data to be more granular, I guess is the way I'd look at it, to understand and prove out those planning decisions. So there was some talk about this is one of the financial benefits. That was one of my questions. How do I sell this to my executives? A big data initiative, and this was one of the recommendations. Other comments, thoughts involved around making sure we had reliable data and calibrating that data in the most meaningful way possible. And then there were just general questions about, how does this help me? So we had an example of international bridge that was looking for ways to measure how customers were using that facility, the amount of time they spent on it, any kind of impact on delays going through customs. So a lot of questions and a lot of opportunities out there.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep the Q&A towards the end. Let me turn it to Shannon Swank. Shannon, your input.
So there was some people struggle with interoperability and being able to access. I think this was probably what Michael was talking about as well, being able to access that customer data. So even, local interoperable agencies, or like you see in the IAG, if you're not issuing tags or accounts, it can be challenging to access that data. Another point was, the toll systems become even more important, the accuracy of toll systems, because you're only as good as the data you're pulling. There is no reconciliation in the back office when you're getting bad data. And when you look at it from a charging perspective, if my credit card bills were 1% or 0.1% wrong, it's still an issue. So that was the majority of it. And then privacy laws, being able to share that data, maybe it's an opt-in program by the users to be able to share that data, not just payment data from an interoperability perspective, but other data, addresses or whatever, so that agencies can see what type of people are using their road, whether it's underserved areas where they really need to focus on account issuance.
Okay. Thank you, Shannon. I'm going to turn it to you, Matt Butterman.
Sure, thanks. I think we had a couple of good conversations going on. One of them was around, I guess, what is the customer expectation? I think one of the members of the group brought up that people in other industries, like Amazon, for example, you can buy anything and everything, and it's an immediate transaction, and then it arrives within 2 hours in some cases. And what does that mean for toll facilities? What is in it for the customer? I think it was the general question that if we can answer that question, what's the problem that we're trying to solve, then we should be able to really have a much more meaningful insights at the end of it. We talked about, generally speaking, what trends are going on with COVID. Google are closed through, I guess, July next year, I want to say was the date, if memory serves. And, I think other companies will probably follow suit. So what does that mean for commuting patterns? And how big data can really start to answer some of those questions, and hopefully provide insights into not only what does that mean for the toll facility, but what does that mean for the customer, and how does the customer base actually change, whether it's behaviors, demographics, or anything along that. And the last point to really bring up was really just, generally speaking, technology issues. How does data storage being secure, making sure that works well with a lot of different platforms out there? What's the right solution for you.
Thank you, Matt. Michael Davis, Group 10.
Yeah, we had some good discussion. I'm not going to repeat, obviously, some of the stuff that's already been talked about, but there were 3 key points I thought would be worthwhile to mention from the question 1, which is more of dealing with current issues. The first was on really using data to kind of find out what customers are comfortable with using to pay, whether it's the Apple Pay and Google Pay that JJ talked about, or some other forms to really better understand the customers and really try to help the non-ETC side of the business from a tolling perspective. The other one was occupancy identification and verification. We have a lot of facilities that have HOV, and using the data within the vehicle to kind of help verify that what people are saying they have, they really do have. And obviously understand there's some things that would have to be worked on a little further on that side to ensure people weren't tricking the system. And then the last one was really looking at increasing efficiency within customer services. So using data to analyze why customers are calling into customer service. Are there common things that are being done? Can some of that be minimized, either the number of calls, or looking at the data to really maybe automate some of those common requests or needs from a customer service standpoint?
All right, well, thank you. I'm going to call on one last person, Austin Mosley.
Yeah, there's a lot of good conversation. The conversation revolved, like Michael said, around 3 areas. But the first area is that, you know, we're a small agency. We just don't have the tools yet. We're still manually doing a lot of stuff. We have access to the data, but we just don't have the tools to bring it all in and start doing some automation rather than manual work in spreadsheets. The second point is, you know, we're a mid-sized toll agency. We've made a lot of strides to integrating some of these tools, but now, you know, we're still struggling with how to get the rest of the information in. We found some data quality issues, and then finally, you know, we're working with some of the mid-level managers and identifying what they need to do what they want. From the vendor's standpoint, I think that one of the vendors is collecting a lot of information, but they're not sure how to use it or what to do with it. And then, you know, another vendor is very dependent upon getting the data in a timely manner, but they're finding that some toll agencies just aren't able to generate the data that they need in a timely manner, and that's impacting delivery. That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you for your input. So with that said, I'm going to turn it to JJ and Jim. I know both of you said on different groups, you heard comments, and then you listened to the comments from the 5 scribes that we picked on. Any thoughts, any reactions, comments? I'll start with you, JJ.
Find the mute button there. Yeah, you know, it's interesting, you know, listening to everybody and talking to everybody about the challenges we have. And, you know, as I mentioned, this is an evolution, not a revolution. And I think a lot of people are looking for immediate answers. You know, we talked about, you know, data interoperability, for instance, and compatible systems, and what do you do with things like that. But, you know, the overall theme from everybody, I think, is, you know, first of all, the reaction to COVID and when's the recovery. The next would be, you know, with all this technology, and we have a generational change in what people expect out of payment systems, you know, how do we get there, and what are the costs going to be to get there in order to do that, and what's the risk on that side. So we're still dealing with the amount of data and the different sources. I mean, again, every time we turn around, there's a new data source. You know, do we really want to look at that data source? Do we really care about what's in the data packets on that side? Trying to pick the different pieces of it, you know, to be useful data for our customers. You know, so I think overall it's defining what's a success for you moving forward. And again, this is going to happen over years. Electronic toll collection, all electronic toll collection didn't happen it seems like it happened in a year, but it didn't. Right? You know, even interoperability on our side took a while. Jim?
No, I agree. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
And I listened in. I was in on group 7, and the things that struck me were, folks saying, well, how do we build a business case? I think that's really pretty easy. First is if you're in a public agency, you live by the rule, and I was there, so I remember I live by the rule, I can only accept free advice or criticism. So the first thing is, ask firms to come in and help you do an assessment. They should not charge you for that, right? Come in and say, here's where we are today. Here's the problems that we're facing. Here's the decisions we want to make. How do we implement technology to help us get there? Because that's really too difficult when you're living day to day in an agency, working on daily transactions, daily customer complaints, daily expectations. Now traffic is down due to COVID. Now's the time to ask those questions. Okay, here's where we are. What are some ideas to help us move in a new and better direction? And I would say that's pretty easy, and you should do that. The second is, and it was a wonderful question. I believe I was on a webinar yesterday with U.S. Army Forces Command, and the question was, well, a lot of times we do all this analysis on this big data, and it's interesting, but it doesn't help me make these decisions that we need to make every day. It may be the wrong data. It may be not in the right timely manner. It may be too expensive to collect for the decision that it's supporting. And so the question is, how do I know which data to go after? So if it's not helping make a decision that you need to make or address a problem that you currently have, then that's probably, a project for later on. It's got to be those areas to make it worthwhile. I have a business case that then you can find technology that can help. It probably will have a good return on investment. But those are the two areas that I think is now is the time to ask for assessments. And if it's not either helping you make a better decision today or helping you address a current problem today, then it's probably, a tier 2 or a tier 3 activity. That's, one day when we have time and money.
Yeah, and one of the things going forward is finding the help you need to give you comfort in where you're going. So, for a long time we've used trusted consultants and trusted integrators to go forward, and now we're being pulled out of the box a little bit with this new technology, and it's scary, right? Because this is a close-knit industry. We're all friends. We've known each other for a long time, and now you're getting pulled like, what are we going to do with this new company? What, whoever it is, Google, Apple, Tesla, what are they bringing? And we don't know them. They're into our industry, and how do we incorporate, again, the old and the new, and how do we make this go forward? It's a challenge. So, you could analyze things to death too. You could do white papers and white papers and white papers and never move forward. We've seen that before too. But, I think we're being pushed a little bit due to the advancement of mobile payment systems, the advancement of cashless into a new environment, and we're not real sure where to go for the help to get us there.
There's one question that came up, and we have a couple more minutes before we start wrapping things up, but this one relates to the issue of privacy and security. So what do we tell folks that are concerned about, data of their customers being subjected to breach, used by third party, et cetera? Let me start with Jim Trogdon. What's the best answer for people that are concerned about this? How would you approach it with your clients or with people asking you that question?
I start with the same answer I give. I think our largest 2 customers here at SAS for storage and hosting is the National Security Agency and the IRS. So we're keenly aware of both privacy and security issues. And I believe if we have systems that can support their needs, we can certainly have systems to support your needs. The other part is that question will continue to get more complicated with this edge data that can be collected. And so the good part about what I was talking about with like ESP on the edge is we can encrypt that data from the point of collection at those devices that may be yours, they may be other devices, all the way to your storage. They can be encrypted from that point, from the edge to storage, which is something that most companies do not have that capability to do today.
JJ, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and just, I guess small p politically, people in general, they tend to trust the private sector more than they do the public sector in handling their data for the most part. And not saying that the private sector hasn't had their share of data breaches that have been very public, including a lot of the credit bureaus that you trust. But when you talk to people, it's if it's data held by government, it's scarier to them for some reason compared to data held by, MasterCard or Visa or, SAS or other companies like that. It's the perception that, government knows stuff about you that, maybe you don't want them to, but if it's a private company, look at the benefit I'm getting from Amazon, right? So I'm not saying it's not a problem. We try, as we all do in all the companies, private or public, to make sure we have every locked, so to speak. But we still see, attempted breaks all the time in our systems, and I think the public's getting to the point where they know there's no 100% anymore. But it's probably the prime thing we look at in developing a system and deploying a system is how you're protecting the data and what data elements are in it, and what really needs to be protected in that elements.
Okay, I'm going to give one chance to, so anyone that's still on that has a question they want to ask, that haven't spoken yet, any thoughts, any contribution? We have time for one quick last question before we wrap up. All right, well, with that said, thank you all for attending. I think this has been a very interesting time. I'd like to give a huge thanks to our distinguished speakers, JJ Eden, Jim Trogdon, and James Hoffman. Hopefully you enjoyed the session today. This was certainly a large group, and it tested the abilities of technologies for sure. So what's next? We're very excited, as I said earlier on, this is the first of many webinars. The questions that you're asking are very much the questions that we're trying to ask as part of the subcommittee that I'm chairing. So I urge you, if you'd like to join our group, or if you have comments that you want to address directly to us, you can send it to IBTTA. I'm sure it'll be circled back to me. But the next stage is going to be for us to schedule smaller size, if you will, webinars. And by that, I mean time-wise, with specific focus areas. We heard today that people want to know, how do you make the case for big data? Others want to know, so how do I approach big data? Where do I start? How do I look at it? The topic of, developing an architecture for an approach for big data, that's a very key element for the work that we're doing. Also, the making the case, whether it's the cost benefit, the safety benefit, et cetera, that's something that we're focusing on as well. And we're going to be having webinars in the short term, talking about case studies from other places where they have applied, guidelines and solutions that have proven to be beneficial for them. The other thing that I want to mention, that one of the outcomes of this subcommittee will be for us to develop pilots. We would like to test different aspects of big data applications with toll agencies around the country and even internationally if it applies. And we're not looking just for early adopters. We're looking at agencies at all stages. We're looking at different size agencies as well, so that we can cater that, the guidelines that we're going to develop to different sizes and different priorities and different stages of implementation of technology. So this is also going to be a part of our discussion points in the next webinars. I hope you can join us, because we're looking for ideas and thoughts around how we should, define these pilots and who they should be catered to. So anyway, having said that, so keep an eye out on the future webinars, and please complete the post-event survey that will be in your inboxes shortly. Please continue to support our community by attending future webinars and meetups. You can find all of them at www.ibtta.org/events. The recorded version of this session will be on the past presentation page, which is on the events section of the website. Again, thank you again. Please stay safe, and hope to see you all soon, and email us with questions. We're happy to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.